Captain Lee Dae-ho walked slowly through the metal corridors of Earth's biggest space station. The sound of his boots echoed in the empty hallways as he made his way to the command center. 3 days ago, everything had changed. 3 days ago, the message arrived from the Galaxy Council, and nothing would ever be the same. Again, the command center was full of people when Lee Dae-ho entered. Officers from every human colony were there. Scientists and engineers filled the room. Politicians and military leaders stood together looking at the giant screen that showed the alien message. Everyone was quiet. Everyone was angry. Ambassador Park Sujin stood at the front of the room. She was a small woman, but her voice was strong when she spoke. "The Galaxy Council thinks we are stupid," she said. "The Council thinks we are weak. The Council thinks we will just give up and do whatever they want." Lee Dae-ho looked at the message on the screen. The aliens had written it in simple words, so humans could understand it. The message said that humanity was too dangerous for the galaxy. Humans were too violent, too unpredictable, too aggressive. The Council had decided that humans needed to be controlled. The demands were simple but terrible. All human military ships had to be given to the Council. Half of all human colonies had to be abandoned. Humans could only live where the Council said they could live. Human ships could only go where the Council gave permission, and alien overseers would watch every human world to make sure humans obeyed. Commander Kim Min-ho stepped forward. He was the best military mind that humanity had. His face was red with anger, but his voice was calm when he spoke. "For 50 years we have been careful," he said. "For 50 years we have held back when aliens attacked us. For 50 years we have been peaceful when they insulted us. For 50 years we have been patient when they cheated us in trade deals." The room was silent as Kim Min-ho continued. "The Council thinks our patience means we are weak. The Council thinks our peace means we are afraid. The Council thinks our careful behavior means we cannot fight. They are wrong. They are very, very wrong." Dr. Choi Haijin walked to the center of the room. She was the head of human research on alien species. Her job was to study how aliens thought and what made them do the things they did. What she had learned over the past 10 years would shock everyone in the room. "The Council has been testing us," she said. "Every time they attacked our ships, they were watching to see how we would respond. Every time they broke a trade agreement, they were studying our reactions. Every time they insulted our ambassadors, they were measuring our anger. They have been treating us like lab rats in an experiment." She pressed a button and new information appeared on the screen. "The Council kept detailed records of every human action. They studied human military responses. They analyzed human diplomatic behavior. They even watched how human children played to understand human psychology." The aliens concluded that humans were primitive but useful. They decided that humans were advanced enough to be good workers but not smart enough to be real threats. They thought they could control humanity the same way they controlled other weak species in the galaxy. But the Council made one huge mistake. They did not understand what makes humans different from every other species in the galaxy. When other species are threatened, they fight alone. When humans are threatened, they fight together. When other species are attacked, they think about their own survival. When humans are attacked, they think about protecting everyone. Lee Dae-ho felt his anger growing as he listened to Dr. Choi Haijin around the room. He could see the same anger in every face. The Council had been playing games with humanity for 50 years. They had been testing and studying and experimenting with human lives, and now they wanted to make humans into slaves. The worst part was that the Council thought they were being generous. They thought giving humans 30 days to surrender was kind. They thought allowing humans to keep half their colonies was merciful. They thought letting humans live as servants was better than destroying them completely. What the Council did not know was that humans had been preparing for this day. The Council thought they were watching everything, but humans had been watching too. Every human ship captain who seemed to surrender easily was actually gathering intelligence. Every human diplomat who seemed weak was actually studying alien psychology. Every human scientist who seemed primitive was actually learning how alien technology worked. Admiral Yoon Jae-sung received a special communication that day. Authorization codes that had been secret for 50 years were suddenly activated all across human space. Hidden shipyards began working. Hidden weapons began charging. Hidden soldiers began moving to secret positions. The Council had given humanity 30 days to surrender, 30 days to give up their freedom, 30 days to accept slavery. 30 days to become the council's servants. What the council did not know was that 30 days was exactly how long humans needed to show the galaxy what happens when you push humanity too far in the command center. Lee Daeho looked around at all the faces filled with anger and determination. These were not the faces of people who would surrender. These were the faces of people who would fight. These were the faces of people who would win. Park Soo-jin spoke again, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. The council thinks they know us. The council thinks they understand us. The council thinks they can control us. They are about to learn that they know nothing about humanity. The room erupted in cheers and shouts of agreement. Every person there knew that war was coming. Every person there knew that the war would be terrible. Every person there knew that humanity would win because they had to win, because losing meant the end of human freedom forever. As the meeting ended and people began to leave, Lee Daeho stayed behind to look at the alien message one more time. 30 days. The council had given them 30 days to surrender or face the consequences. The council thought the consequences would be the destruction of humanity, but Lee Daeho knew better. The consequences would be the destruction of the council. The consequences would be the end of alien rule over the galaxy. The consequences would be the beginning of a new age where humans were no longer the underdogs. The Galaxy Council's biggest mistake was not underestimating human technology. It was not underestimating human courage. It was not even underestimating human intelligence. The Galaxy Council's biggest mistake was pushing humanity too far, and in 30 days, the entire galaxy would learn what that mistake would cost them. The war was coming and humanity was ready. 30 days had passed since the Galaxy Council delivered their ultimatum. Captain Song Yoon-soo stood on the bridge of her ship watching the council fleet approach the human colony of New Seoul. The aliens expected to find frightened humans ready to surrender. Instead, they found empty space where a thriving city used to baity council ships slowed down, confused by what they were seeing. Their scanners showed no life signs, no energy readings, no signs of human presence. The colony that housed 3 million people had simply vanished. The aliens had no idea that humans had been planning this evacuation for 20 years. Song Yoon-soo smiled as she watched the alien ships from her hidden position behind the moon. The council fleet was exactly where human strategists had predicted they would be. The aliens always followed the same patterns, always used the same tactics, always made the same mistakes. On the lead council ship, Admiral Vexstar was growing frustrated. The blue-skinned alien commander had led successful invasions of 12 different species. He had never encountered a situation where an entire population could disappear so completely. Where had the humans gone? How had they moved so many people so quickly? What Admiral Vexstar did not know was that humans had been building secret bases throughout the galaxy for 50 years. Every abandoned mine, every forgotten asteroid, every empty moon had been turned into a hidden refuge. Captain Song Yoon-soo had spent her entire career moving supplies and equipment to these secret locations. The council made their first mistake when they sent scouts to search the empty colony. The human city looked abandoned, but it was actually a carefully designed trap. Major Park Tae-hyun had spent 5 years turning every building into a potential weapon. When the alien scouts entered the city, the buildings exploded. The explosions were not random destruction. They were carefully planned to send a message to the council. The pattern of explosions spelled out words in the ancient human language. The message said, "We are not afraid, we are not weak. We are not your slaves." Lieutenant Colonel Han Seok-jin had studied every council species for 30 years. He knew their fears, their weaknesses, their psychological breaking points. The explosions were designed to create maximum fear among the alien crews. Each species saw something different in the destruction, something that reminded them of their worst nightmares. The council ships tried to use their advanced shields to protect themselves from further attacks. But something strange was happening. Their technology was not working properly. Their shields flickered and failed. Their weapons lost power. Their communications became filled with static. Dr. Lee Ji-won had discovered something amazing about human biology. When humans felt strong emotions, their brains created electrical fields that interfered with alien technology. The angrier humans became, the more their technology failed. The more determined humans became, the weaker alien defenses became. Chief Engineer Kim So-young had spent 20 years studying this phenomenon. She had learned that human consciousness itself was a weapon against alien technology. The Council had always wondered why their psychic powers did not work on humans. Now they were learning that human minds were naturally resistant to alien influence. The Council fleet tried to retreat, but they found that human ships had surrounded them. Captain Moon Byung-ho led the attack with tactics that no alien had ever seen before. Human ships moved in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully coordinated. Each human vessel knew exactly where every other ship would be. Battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Council had lost half their fleet. The surviving alien ships fled back to Council space carrying news that would terrify the galaxy. The humans were not primitive, the humans were not weak, the humans had been pretending to be harmless while preparing for war. Admiral Vextar sent an emergency message to the Council headquarters. The message was simple but shocking. The humans have been lying to us for 50 years. They are not the species we thought they are something else, something dangerous, something we do not understand on Earth. Admiral Yoon Jae-seung received reports from across human space. Every Council attack had failed, every human trap had worked perfectly, every alien fleet had been defeated or forced to retreat. The first phase of the war was over, and humanity had won every battle, but the real victory was not military. The real victory was psychological. The Council had believed they were superior to humans in every way. They had believed their technology was unbeatable. They had believed their strategies were perfect. Now they knew they were wrong. Commander Shin Dong-wook prepared for the next phase of the war. Human ships began appearing in Council space, attacking military targets with precision that seemed impossible. The aliens could not understand how humans knew exactly where to strike and exactly when their defenses would be weakest. The answer was simple. Humans had been infiltrating Council society. For decades, every human traitor who seemed harmless was actually a spy. Every human diplomat who seemed weak was actually gathering intelligence. Every human scientist who seemed primitive was actually studying alien technology. Dr. Kong Soo-min had built the largest spy network in galactic history. Human agents had been placed in every Council government, in every military organization, in every research facility. The aliens had been so convinced of human inferiority that they never suspected they were being watched. The Council called an emergency meeting to discuss the human threat. But the meeting was chaos. Every Council member blamed the others for underestimating humanity. Some aliens wanted to negotiate, others wanted to fight too. The death of few species began secretly considering whether they should surrender to the humans. What terrified the Council most was that humans fought differently from every other species. Other aliens fought for territory or resources or power. Humans fought for something much more dangerous. They fought for principles. They fought because they had been insulted. They fought because they refused to be slaves. Captain Jang Hyun-soo led a raid on a Council supply depot. The attack was so successful that it captured enough weapons to arm 10 human fleets, but the weapons were not the real prize. The real prize was the intelligence data that showed how afraid the Council had become. The Council had always controlled the galaxy through fear and intimidation, but now they were the ones who were afraid. They were afraid of human technology. They were afraid of human tactics. They were afraid of human determination. Most of all, they were afraid that other species would learn from the human example. Colonel Oh Myung-hee began broadcasting intercepted Council communications across the galaxy. The messages revealed how the Council really felt about the species they ruled. The aliens had been calling their subjects slaves and servants. And worse, other species heard these messages and began to understand that humans were fighting for everyone's freedom. The war was spreading beyond humanity. The Council faced rebellions on 12 different worlds. Minor species that had been oppressed for centuries suddenly saw hope in the human victory. They began attacking Council installations and freeing prisoners and demanding their own independence. In just 30 days, the Galaxy Council had gone from being the rulers of the galaxy to being desperate and frightened and losing battles on every front. Their biggest mistake had been pushing humanity too far. Now they were learning that some mistakes cannot be undone. The humans were awake, and they were angry, and they were winning. The Council chambers on Centauri Prime had never seen such chaos in their 1,000-year history. Supreme Chancellor Kethmore slammed his tentacles on the crystal table as reports poured in from across the galaxy. Human forces had attacked 17 Council worlds in the past week. Each attack had been perfectly planned, perfectly executed, and perfectly devastating. Commander Shin Dong-wook studied the holographic display showing Council territory from his command ship. The aliens had made their space stations and military bases in predictable patterns. They always put their most important facilities in the center of their territory, thinking this would keep them safe. They were wrong. What made the Council panic was not just losing battles. The Council had lost battles before. What made them panic was that humans seemed to know everything about Council operations before the Council knew it themselves. Human attacks came at exactly the right time to cause maximum damage. The secret was Dr. Kang Soo-min and her network of human spies. For 30 years, human agents had been working their way into every level of Council society. They had become trusted advisors to alien leaders. They had become essential workers in military facilities. They had become the people the Council depended on most. When the war started, these human agents revealed themselves. The trusted advisor poisoned the water supply. The essential worker sabotaged the weapon systems. The dependable translator sent military secrets to human forces. The Council discovered that their greatest strength had become their greatest weakness. Colonel Oh Myung-hee sat in her broadcasting station sending intercepted Council communications across the galaxy. The alien leaders thought their private conversations were secret. They had no idea that humans had been listening for decades. Every Council meeting, every military briefing, every private discussion between alien commanders was being recorded and analyzed. The broadcasts were having exactly the effect humans had hoped for. Species that had been oppressed by the Council for centuries heard their rulers talking about them like animals. The Council members discussed their subjects as property to be bought and sold. They talked about destroying entire civilizations if they became inconvenient on the world of Kepler-4. The native species called the Helix rose up against their Council overseers. The Helix had been forced to mine rare metals for the Council for 200 years. They had never been paid for their work. They had never been allowed to keep what they dug from their own planet. Helix rebellion was led by a young female named Zira, who had learned to speak human languages. She had listened to human broadcasts and learned that other species could be free. She had learned that the Council could be defeated. She had learned that resistance was possible. Captain Jang Hyun-soo received a message from Zira asking for human help. The Helix had weapons, but they did not know how to use them properly. They had courage, but they needed training. They had hope, but they needed guidance. The decision to help the Helix was easy for human commanders. This was exactly what they had been. Fighting for the war was not just about human freedom. It was about freedom for every species that had been oppressed by the Council. Helping the Helix was helping themselves. Human military advisors arrived on Kepler-4 within days. Lieutenant Kim Woo-jin had specialized in training irregular forces. He taught the Helix how to use guerrilla tactics, how to strike quickly and disappear, how to turn their knowledge of their own world into a weapon against the occupiers. The Helix rebellion succeeded. In just 2 weeks, the Council garrison was forced to evacuate. The rare metal mines were destroyed. The Council lost one of their most important sources of materials. News of the victory spread to other oppressed worlds. More rebellions began. 6 worlds, 7 worlds, 12 worlds. Each rebellion was supported by human advisors. Each rebellion used human tactics. Each rebellion weakened the Council and strengthened the growing alliance against alien oppression. The Council military tried to adapt to human strategies, but they kept making the same mistakes. They thought in terms of formal battles between organized armies. They could not understand warfare that came from everywhere and nowhere. They could not fight an enemy that looked like civilians until the moment they attacked. General Lee Hyun-jung had studied every Council military manual for 20 years. She understood their doctrine better than most Council generals did. The aliens always tried to control territory by building strong defensive positions. Human forces simply went around the defenses and attacked the supply lines. The psychological warfare was even more effective than the military campaigns. Captain No Sang-hoon had developed specific tactics for each Council species. The insectoid Vorth were terrified of fire, so human forces used flame weapons against them. The crystalline Nexari were afraid of sonic disruption, so human forces used sound weapons. But the most devastating psychological weapon was simple truth. Human agents had recorded conversations between council leaders for decades. When these recordings were broadcast, the galaxy learned exactly what the council thought of their subjects. The aliens had been laughing at the species they ruled. The council tried to maintain unity among their member species, but trust was breaking down. The Vorth suspected the Nexari of making secret deals with humans. The Nexari accused the Zentari of planning to abandon the war. The Zentari blamed the Kithara for starting the conflict by demanding human surrender. Ambassador Eugene received secret communications from 3 different council species. Each species wanted to negotiate separate peace treaties with humanity. Each species was willing to betray their allies to save themselves. Each species was more afraid of human retaliation than council punishment. The human response was always the same: no separate peace treaties, no special deals, no negotiations until the entire council surrendered unconditionally. Humanity had been pushed too far to accept anything less than total victory. The council tried one last desperate strategy. They offered to withdraw their ultimatum. They offered to return to the old relationship where humans were treated as junior partners. They offered to pretend the war had never happened. Commander Shin Dong-wook broadcast the human response across the galaxy in 7 different languages. The message was simple: the time for negotiation was over. The council had made their choice when they decided to enslave humanity. Now they would live with the consequences. The hunt was no longer just about defeating the council military. The hunt was about removing the council from power permanently. The hunt was about creating a new galactic order where no species would ever again be subjected to the kind of oppression that had sparked this war. As human forces prepared for the next phase of their campaign, the galaxy watched in amazement. A species that had been dismissed as primitive was systematically destroying the most powerful alliance in galactic history. The council had pushed humanity too far, and now they were learning that some mistakes cannot be survived. The hunters had become the hunted, and the hunt was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the Galaxy Council delivered their ultimatum to humanity. Now Supreme Chancellor Kethmar sat alone in his private chamber, staring at reports that told a story of complete disaster. The Council was not just losing the war, they were losing everything they had built over 1,000 years. The latest report came from Ambassador Eugene, who had received formal surrender requests from 3 different council species. The Helix had joined humanity completely. The Nexari were offering to become human allies. Even the proud Zentari were sending secret messages asking for mercy. What terrified the remaining council members most was that humans were winning while barely trying. Human casualties were lower than council casualties. In every battle, human ships were capturing more enemy vessels than they were losing. Human forces were advancing on every front. Captain No Sang-hoon had perfected the art of psychological warfare against each council species. The Vorth military had collapsed when human forces broadcast the sounds of their queens dying. The Nexari fleet had surrendered when humans threatened to use sonic weapons against their crystal cities. The economic warfare was equally devastating. Finance Minister Lim Yoon-ha had spent decades learning how the council economy worked. She knew which trade routes were essential, which resources were critical, which financial systems held everything together. When the war started, human merchant ships simply disappeared from galactic trade routes. The council had not realized how much they depended on human commerce. Human ships carried goods between worlds that had no other connections. Human traders provided services that no other species offered. Without human merchants, the council economy began falling apart. Worlds that had imported food for centuries began facing starvation. Industrial planets that needed raw materials had to shut down their factories. Financial systems that depended on human banks started collapsing. The council had always seen human traders as a minor part of galactic commerce. Now they discovered that humans had been the backbone of interstellar trade for 50 years. When humans stopped trading, the galaxy stopped working. General Baek Hyun-young received reports from every front of the war. Human ground forces were winning battles against enemies that outnumbered them 10 to 1. Human soldiers were capturing objectives that should have been impossible to take. Human tactics were working better than anyone had imagined. The secret was not better weapons or better training. The secret was that humans understood warfare in a way that no other species did. Other species fought to win territory or capture resources or prove their strength. Humans fought to protect their families and their freedom and their future. Drsco. Jae-hoon led the human scientific effort that was producing new technologies faster than council scientists could understand them. Human researchers were developing new weapons, new shields, new propulsion systems, new communication devices at an incredible pace. Under the pressure of war, human innovation had accelerated beyond anything the council thought possible. New technologies were being designed, tested, and deployed in weeks instead of years. Human engineers were solving problems that had puzzled alien scientists for centuries. The council had always believed that their technology was superior to human technology. Now they were learning that humans had been holding back their real capabilities for decades. Every human ship that seemed primitive was actually using technology that aliens could not match. The turning point came when human forces attacked the council stronghold of Vega Station. The station was supposed to be impregnable. It was protected by energy shields that had never been breached. It was armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Captain Cho Kyu-sung led the attack with a fleet of human ships that looked like ordinary merchant vessels. The council defenders laughed when they saw what appeared to be a group of helpless traders approaching their fortress. They stopped laughing when the merchant ships revealed hidden weapons. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, Vega Station was in human hands. The council had lost their most important military base. The galaxy had seen that no council fortress was strong enough to stop determined human forces. The capture of Vega Station broke the council psychologically. The aliens had built their entire strategy around defending strong positions. Now they knew that no position was strong enough. Human forces could go anywhere, do anything, defeat any defense. Colonel Kwon Min-jae analyzed the psychological impact of the victory. The council species had evolved on worlds where change happened slowly. They were not good at adapting to new situations. They could not handle rapid shifts in the balance of power. Humans had evolved on a world where everything changed constantly. Human ancestors had survived ice ages, natural disasters, climate shifts, and countless other challenges. Human brains were designed to adapt to changing circumstances. The war had become a contest between species that feared change and a species that thrived on change. The outcome was no longer in doubt. The only question was how long the council would take to admit defeat. 3 more council worlds surrendered in the weeks following the fall of Vega Station. The Kithara Empire announced that they were withdrawing from the council. The Draconian Confederacy began negotiating a separate peace treaty. The Galactic Trade Federation simply stopped supporting the war effort. The council tried to rally their remaining allies, but trust had been completely destroyed. Each species suspected the others of planning to betray them. Each species was more concerned with their own survival than with council victory. Supreme Chancellor Kethmore called a final meeting of the council leadership. The few species that still supported the war gathered in the ruined chambers of the council headquarters. Half the seats were empty. The remaining delegates looked defeated and frightened. The chancellor tried to give a speech about council unity and the need to fight to the end, but his words fell on deaf ears. The council members had seen what happened to species that continued to resist human forces. They had no desire to share that fate. As the meeting ended in chaos and recrimination, Captain Ru Dong-min received intelligence that the council was preparing to surrender. The alien leadership had finally accepted that they could not win a war against humanity. The only question was whether they would surrender before or after their civilization was completely destroyed. The tables had turned completely. The species that had demanded human surrender were now begging for human mercy. The aliens that had threatened to enslave humanity were now afraid of human retaliation. The council that had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years was now facing extinction. The Galaxy Council had made their biggest mistake when they pushed humanity too far. Now they were learning that some mistakes are too big to survive. The Galaxy Council had one final plan born of desperation and arrogance. Supreme Chancellor Kethmore gathered what remained of the council fleets for a massive assault on Earth itself. The alien leaders believed that destroying humanity's homeworld would break human will and end the war. They had forgotten that humans were no longer limited to one planet. Admiral Cho Kusung stood on the bridge of the human flagship, watching the Council Armada approach Earth. The alien fleet was huge, over 3,000 ships of every size and type. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. It was also the last mistake the Council would ever make. The Council had spent 8 months learning that humans were not what they seemed. Now they were about to learn that Earth was not what it seemed either. The human homeworld looked like a peaceful blue and green planet protected by a few orbital stations. In reality, Earth had become the most heavily defended world in the galaxy. Dr. Yoon Hai-young had spent her entire career studying alien psychology. She had learned that every council species had one thing in common. They had all evolved on stable worlds where change happened slowly. They could not adapt quickly to new situations. They could not handle surprises. The defense of Earth was designed to be the biggest surprise in galactic history. The Council expected to face conventional orbital defenses and planetary shields. Instead, they encountered weapons that violated every known law of physics. When the Council fleet entered Earth's solar system, the first surprise was that human ships were everywhere. The aliens had expected to find a few dozen human vessels protecting Earth. Instead, they found thousands of human ships hidden behind asteroids, moons, and space stations. The second surprise was that the human ships were not trying to stop the Council fleet from reaching Earth. Human forces were positioning themselves to trap the aliens after they committed to the attack. Admiral Cho Kusung was not trying to defend Earth. He was trying to destroy the entire Council fleet. The third surprise was Earth itself. As the Council Armada approached the planet, strange things began happening. Alien ships started losing power. Their weapons stopped working. Their communications failed. Their navigation systems gave false readings. Colonel Kwon Min-jae had been right in his analysis. The Council had always relied on their reputation for power more than actual power. When that reputation was destroyed, they had nothing left to fight with. The Council fleet tried to retreat, but discovered that human forces had surrounded them completely. Every escape route was blocked. Every safe harbor was occupied. Every hiding place was filled with human ships. The aliens were trapped in a system where the laws of physics seemed to have changed. The battle for Earth lasted 3 days. It was not really a battle. It was a demonstration of human technological superiority. The Council threw everything they had at Earth's defenses, the planet's defensive systems. Casually destroyed ships that had been considered invincible. On the first day, the Council lost half their fleet. The alien commanders could not understand how human weapons were penetrating their strongest shields, how human ships were moving faster than physics should allow, how human defenses were hitting targets from impossible distances. On the second day, the Council lost most of their remaining ships. The alien crews began abandoning their vessels rather than face certain destruction. Some Council ships tried to surrender, but human forces were no longer accepting surrenders. The time for mercy had passed. On the third day, the last Council ships died in the cold space around Earth. The alien armada that had been assembled to destroy humanity became space debris orbiting the human homeworld. The Council's final gambit had failed completely. Admiral Vextar died when his flagship was destroyed by weapons he could not comprehend. Supreme Chancellor Kethmer died when his command ship was torn apart by forces he could not understand. The Council leadership that had demanded human surrender died in the space around the world. They had tried to destroy the destruction of the Council fleet at Earth, broke the alien alliance permanently. The few Council worlds that had not already surrendered began sending desperate messages to human forces begging for mercy. The Council as a military and political force ceased to exist. Captain Ru Dongmin received the final surrender transmission from the Council. Remnants, the message was simple. We surrender unconditionally. We ask for mercy. We accept human terms. We acknowledge that we were wrong to threaten humanity. The war was over, but the victory felt hollow. Human forces had proven their strength, but they had also shown the galaxy a side of humanity that had been hidden for generations. The species that had seemed so peaceful and patient had revealed themselves capable of devastating warfare. Price of the Council's arrogance was not just military defeat, it was the complete destruction of their civilization. The Council had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. In less than a year, humans had reduced them to scattered refugees, begging for mercy. Dr. Seo Jae-hoon's Scientists began studying the wreckage of council ships floating around Earth. The alien technology that had seemed so advanced was actually primitive. Compared to what humans had developed, the council had been living on past achievements while humans had been innovating. The galaxy would never be the same. The old order based on council dominance was gone forever. A new order would have to be built. From the ashes of the old one, the question was whether humans would use their victory to create something better or something worse. President Song In-woo faced the most important decision in human history. Humanity had the power to rule the galaxy. Through fear and force, they had the technology to dominate every other species. They had the military strength to impose their will on everyone. But Song In-woo remembered why the war had started. The council had pushed humanity too far by trying to make them slaves. Humanity had fought for freedom, not for the right to enslave others. The victory would be meaningless if humans became the oppressors they had fought against the galaxy. Council had learned too late that their biggest mistake was pushing humanity too far. Now humanity had to avoid making the same mistake. The species that had fought for freedom had to decide whether they would use their power to protect freedom or destroy it. The war was over, but the real test of humanity was just beginning. 5 years after the war ended, Ambassador Kim Na-young walked through the halls of the new Galactic Assembly building. The old council chambers had been torn down and replaced with a circular design where no species held elevated positions. Representatives from 47 worlds sat as equals discussing the future of the galaxy. The transformation had not been easy. President Song In-woo had faced enormous pressure from human colonies to establish an empire based on military conquest. Human generals wanted to rule through force. Human politicians wanted to exploit their victory. Human corporations wanted to control alien resources. But Song In-woo had chosen a different path. He remembered that humanity had fought for freedom, not for the right to dominate others. The victory would be meaningless if humans became the oppressors they had defeated. Building a better galaxy was more important than ruling it. The decision had been controversial. Many humans felt that after 50 years of being treated as inferior, they deserved to be the superior species. Some human worlds threatened to leave the alliance if they were not given special privileges. Some human military leaders resigned rather than accept alien equals. The Young-hae-min had been given the task of helping other species understand humanity. Her cultural exchange programs had become the foundation of the new galactic order. She taught alien children about human history, literature, and philosophy. She helped them understand that humanity's strength came from hope, not hatred. The most important lesson was that humans had learned to find opportunity in crisis. While other species feared change, humans saw change as a chance to improve their situation. Human ancestors had survived countless disasters by adapting and innovating rather than resisting and hiding. The economic reconstruction had been supervised by Trade Commissioner Lee Seung-ho, who insisted on fair agreements that benefited all species. The old council system of exploitation had been replaced with genuine partnerships. Human technology was shared freely, but only with species that committed to protecting the rights of all sentient beings. The new trade agreements were revolutionary. Instead of the council system where strong species took resources from weak ones, the new system encouraged cooperation and mutual benefit. Human merchants helped develop alien economies rather than exploiting them. General Park Yoon-soo had transformed the human military into something unprecedented, a truly multi-species peacekeeping force. Human officers served alongside alien soldiers. Their combined forces had ended conflicts that had raged for centuries. The peacekeeping forces were not conquerors or occupiers. They were protectors who intervened when strong species tried to oppress weak ones. They stopped wars before they started. They protected refugees. They delivered aid to disaster areas. They showed the galaxy that military power could be used to help rather than harm. The greatest change was in how the galaxy viewed humanity. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive newcomers were now recognized as natural leaders in times of crisis, but more importantly, humans had proven that strength without wisdom leads to tyranny. Captain Hang Jun, who patrolled the border between former council space and the new free territories, His ship was crewed by humans, aliens, and even some former council species working together. The crew that had once been enemies now trusted each other with their lives. The transformation had not been universal. Some former council worlds had refused to join the new order. They had retreated to isolated systems where they continued to practice the old ways of domination and exploitation, but they were no longer a threat to galactic peace. Other species had embraced the new order completely. The Helix had become humanity's closest allies. The Nexari had shared their crystal technology with human scientists. The Zentari had opened their libraries to human scholars. The galaxy was becoming truly united for the first time in its history. The new constitution of the Galactic Assembly was based on principles that the old council had never understood. Every species had the right to self-determination. Every world had the right to choose its own government. Every individual had the right to live free from oppression. Ambassador Kim Na-young had helped write the constitution, drawing on human legal traditions and alien wisdom. The document was not perfect, but it was better than anything the galaxy had seen before. It could be changed and improved as the galaxy learned and grew. The most important change was that the new order was not based on fear. The old council had ruled by threatening to destroy anyone who disobeyed. The new assembly governed by consensus and cooperation. Disagreements were resolved through negotiation, not warfare. President Song In-woo had announced that he would step down after his term ended. He had proven that human leaders could give up power voluntarily, something that had never happened in council history. His example had inspired leaders from other species to follow democratic principles. The galaxy was not perfect. Crime still existed. Conflicts still arose. Some species still tried to exploit others. But the new order had mechanisms for dealing with these problems. The peacekeeping forces stopped wars before they spread. The assembly resolved disputes through mediation. The courts protected the rights of all species. Captain Ru Dong-min reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. Humanity had been forced to show the galaxy their capacity for war, but they had chosen to demonstrate their capacity for peace. The council had pushed them too far, but that push had created something beautiful. The old galaxy had been a place where the strong dominated the weak, where might made right, where fear kept order. The new galaxy was a place where different species worked together, where justice was more important than power, where hope was stronger than fear. The Galaxy Council's biggest mistake had been pushing humanity too far, but perhaps that mistake had been necessary. The old order had been built on oppression, and it had taken human anger to tear it down. Now a new civilization was rising from the ashes. As Hong Joon-ho looked out at the stars from his patrol ship, he saw not territories to be conquered, but worlds to be protected. He saw not enemies to be defeated, but friends to be made. He saw not a galaxy to be ruled, but a community to be served. The council had thought they were punishing humanity by giving them an ultimatum. Instead, they had given humanity the opportunity to show what they were truly capable of. The galaxy was a better place because humans had been pushed too far. The new order would not last forever. Nothing did, but it would endure long enough to teach the galaxy that there was a better way to live, a way based on cooperation instead of domination, a way based on hope instead of fear, a way based on the belief that all species deserve to be free. The Galaxy Council had made their biggest mistake when they pushed humanity too far, but from that mistake had come the greatest gift the galaxy had ever received: the chance to start over, the chance to build something better, the chance to prove that even the darkest times could lead to the brightest futures.